There are many reasons why a building or a structure should be demolished. These could be in danger of collapsing or sometimes have to be dismantled to make way for new buildings in the same location. This demolition is planned with great attention to detail to minimize the risk and ensure only the intended structure is destroyed. However, sometimes things go wrong. The most controlled explosions are spectacular and make the whole process look very easy. In reality, it's not as simple as it seems. Here are 15 examples of controlled demolition that didn't go exactly the way the engineers had hoped, to sometimes scary but sometimes hilarious proportions. Let's take a look at 15 structural demolitions that went wrong. Ohio Edison Mad River Power Plant, USA. Plans to demolish the 275-foot-tall chimney at Ohio's Mad River Power Plant failed when it fell in the wrong direction on Wednesday. Luckily, no one was hurt. The controlled explosion was supposed to topple the tower over the cleared area to the east, but instead fell to the southeast, falling on two 12,500-volt power lines and a backup generator. About 25 people, consisting of the media, First Energy Corp employees, demolition crews and their family members, were dispersed to avoid falling power lines. The failed demolition left 4,000 customers in West Springfield without power for more than 2 hours, and traffic lights went out in some areas. The crew detonated the explosive properly, but an unknown crack in the south side of the tower caused it to fall backwards, said Lisa Kelly, president and owner of Advanced Explosives Demolition Incorporated. Fortunately, no debris fell into the Mad River or nearby railroad tracks and no one was injured. Pontiac Silverdome, Michigan. The Pontiac Silverdome has for years been one of America's most famous ruins, a shadow of the arena that once hosted the Pope, the Super Bowl and the World Cup. Demolition of Detroit's 80,000-seat arena began with a partial explosion designed to collapse the top of the structure, the first part of a process that is expected to take up to a year. However, when the explosives were detonated, only a few puffs of smoke came out. Demolition company Adamo said 10% of the explosives failed to detonate. It is said that the building should collapse only if it is not clear. Silverdome, 30 miles northwest of downtown Detroit, was first hailed as one of the best athletic venues in the world, but for many, the neglect ended up becoming a symbol of the decline of southeast Michigan, an area hit by the decline of the auto industry. Australian beer silo, Australia. The goal was to blow up a disused silo west of Brisbane, but the 50-year-old building isn't easy to destroy. A demolition team has planted 100 kilograms of explosive in a silo used to store malt used to brew beer in Red Bank, Ipswich. But the mob was slightly confused when the controlled explosion failed to collapse the structure, which simply toppled over to the side. There's always the possibility that it's going to last as it was before. Troy McCracken of South Cross Demolition told 9 News, so there's a fine line between too much and not enough. For 40 minutes, the demolition team worked closely with the excavators to give the silo an extra push so that it fell to the ground. Footage of the building hanging after the explosion became the bait for ridiculous news commentary around the world, from the BBC to viral video sites like MSN Now, which captioned the footage, "Watch this building casually trying to tear it down," mocked. The 4,000 tons of debris remaining at the site will be cleared over the next few weeks before the site is returned to Queensland Rail. Flour Factory, Turkey. Here is another failure in the demolition of a building. Demolition in Turkey went dramatically wrong as the building failed to fall and fell onto its roof. A plan to demolish a building in central Turkey's Kankuri failed when the 25-meter-tall building collapsed on its roof. The building, a 1928 grain mill that had not been used since 1980s, was planned to be demolished to become a shopping center. There were no reports of casualties. Crimean residential building, Ukraine. It seems the third time's a charm for a collapsed building in Sevastopol, Ukraine. A building in the disputed city of Sevastopol on the Crimean Peninsula was moved after 2 previous failed demolition attempts, causing the building to tilt at a 70-degree angle. According to the Moscow Times, a second explosion failed on the same day, prompting authorities to evacuate the area. The 16-story building was finally demolished the next day. The demolition of the building was ordered after it was discovered that it had been built illegally, reports the Moscow Times. Dalhousie Generating Station, Canada. Fredericton NB Power hopes a second time's a charm as it tries again later this month to demolish buildings at the now-closed Dalhousie Power Plant. In August, an attempt to tear down the desulfurization stack and the Unit 2 exhaust gas boiler failed because the building did not respond to the explosion as expected NB Power said in a statement. Investigations and assessments by third-party engineers confirmed that the pile had not moved since the explosion. According to NB Power, the stack is structurally stable and is not in danger of collapsing. Danish silo, Denmark. Demolition of the 53-meter-long silo in Vordingborg, Denmark has been going according to plan for months. What the workers didn't anticipate was that the silo would fall in the wrong direction. Instead of landing in the clean area designated for the remains, the silo landed on the top of the neighboring library and cultural center, causing the crowd of onlookers to gasp. Fortunately, no one was injured in the accident, Sydsjællands and Lolland Falsters police told Danish television. Leaning Towers of Dallas. Attempts to blow up a tall office building in Dallas, Texas failed. Most of the structures have collapsed, but one tower has remained standing, despite many attempts to tear it down. Attempts to destroy the building began on February 16th, but the explosion failed, only partially collapsing. The center of the building, which contains a concrete and steel elevator shaft, is preserved. An unruly structure that has stood crooked for days after an initial failed demolition attempt finally collapsed on March 2nd, 2020. Liverpool Apartment, UK. These buildings are built to last. After the first attempt at detonation, none of the buildings moved at all. On the second day, one building collapsed and the other remained. On the third attempt, a quarter of the remaining building collapsed, but cables and cranes eventually had to lower it from floor to floor. A 1960s tower that endured two partial demolition attempts still stands after only one corner was demolished on the third attempt. Hundreds of Seaforth residents on Merseyside have gathered to count down until the two towers commit to the ruins of history, but they're scratching their heads when nothing happens. A loud bang was heard on the first attempt, but neither of the 14-story towers named Churchill House and Montgomery House moved in the slightest. A second attempt caused Churchill House to collapse at 1 p.m, but Montgomery House remained standing. The third attempt was successful when the other two were unsuccessful, but still only knocked down about a quarter of the tower. I'm very amazed that despite two attempts, the building was still standing. Would you like to share your thoughts on this strong building? Zip Feed Tower, South Dakota. The Zip Feed Tower is a grain elevator and feed mill in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. At 202 feet, it was the tallest residential building in South Dakota from its construction in 1956-57 until its demolition in December 2005. The factory closed in 2000 and was scheduled to be demolished in 2005 to make way for office and commercial space. On December 3, 2005, workers failed to blow up the building. The tower fell into its basement, leaning to one side, but it was still standing. Demolition crews have attempted to free the structure by cutting rebar through the structure and then placing explosives in a ring around the base and between the vertical silos. However, the integrity of the structure is such that when the foundation is cut off, the main structure folds straight down, crashing into the broken foundation and the basement. A review of the demolition project found that the crew had seriously underestimated the amount of explosive cutting required to destroy the vertical integrity of the structure. A crane and crushing ball were used over the next 2 weeks to complete the demolition. The tallest building in Sioux Falls is currently the 11-story CenturyLink Tower. Miami Condos, USA. On June 24, 2021, at approximately 1:22 a.m., Champlain Towers South, a 12-story beachfront condominium in Surfside, Florida, USA, a suburb of Miami, partially collapsed. 98 people died. 4 people were rescued from the rubble, but one died of his injuries shortly after arriving at the hospital. 11 others were injured. This residence was much weaker than the study had expected. During the explosion, the building suddenly collapsed, injuring a worker. About 35 people were rescued that same day from the part of the building that had not yet collapsed, which was demolished 10 days later. This was a sad incident. There was not a proper study of the building, which caused several losses of lives. Liuzhou Residential Building, China. A 22-story apartment building was due to be demolished to make way for new real estate projects, but demolition failed for technical reasons. It happened on December 30th in Liuzhou. The explosion tore the building in half, but only one collapsed and the other remained standing, but overturned. It was in 2009, the failed demolition of a residential tower in Liuzhou. Instead of falling to the ground as intended, the other half of the building fell to the side and hit the ground sideways. Construction workers had to dismantle the remaining half of the building with a crane. The Liuzhou demolition incident is just one of several major demolition failures to have occurred in China in recent years. Anglesey Power Plant, Victoria. Alcoa's former power plant in Anglesey is now a mess of crumpled steel after being razed with explosives. British experts were tasked with placing and detonating the explosives. A towering industrial tower was left intact, deliberately spared from demolition. The demolition has been shrouded in controversy, with Anglesians concerned about the possible release of asbestos from the former power plant. However, Alcoa insists that the demolition will not endanger the safety of workers or the public. The demolition itself went well but lacked a plan. There was asbestos in the building and demolition companies didn't notice, so they blew up the building and released hazardous chemicals into the air. Clarion Hotel, USA. Old hotels are often more expensive to renovate than simply restore, and builders have to demolish old buildings to make way for new ones. In 2015, the 12-story Clarion Hotel was demolished using 4,400 pounds of explosives. Demolition workers used Old West methods to knock down the last remaining tower after the Las Vegas casino exploded. The 13-hour saga ends after the building is chained with steel cables to a crane, which is then tugged until the Clarion Hotel casino elevator shaft collapses. The 12-story Clarion Hotel Casino, which opened in 1970 and was briefly owned by actress Debbie Reynolds, became the 13th hotel to experience Sin City's infamous explosion. Dumani, a developer who bought the property in October for $22.5 million in cash, plans to build a 60-story hotel tower that could become the tallest residential building on the Strip. Amanda Dickinson never lived in the Clarion or its incarnations, but she enjoyed her death Tuesday morning after traveling from Ripon, Wisconsin to mark an unlikely point in her life, personally witnessing a building explosion. St. Petersburg Sports and Complex, Russia. The roof of the ice hockey stadium in St. Petersburg collapsed during demolition, killing a worker who was pulled into the rubble. Dramatic footage of the collapse showing a worker running and falling to reach the man's cage hanging from a crane as the structure collapsed was released by the news website Fontanka. Rescuers later found the body of 29-year-old worker Matvey Kucherov, news sites reported. The man reportedly left the cage without a harness to work on the roof before it collapsed. The Regional Investigative Committee has not yet started criminal proceedings because of the incident, Fontanka said, citing a spokesman. According to the Russian Emergencies Ministry, 80% of the stadium walls collapsed. Sports complex and concert St. The Soviet-era Petersburg was scheduled to be dismantled after being badly damaged. Local architects protested the demolition plans, arguing that the 1980 building was an architectural icon of Soviet neo-constructivism. This was a bad incident. There should be much care taken while demolition of any building. Lessons learned: buildings and structures demolition is required for many purposes. Methods and procedures for the demolition of buildings and other structures are described. As we know, every building or structure design has a life called the design age. The building is designed to last, say, 80 to 100 years. When the life of this building has expired, the structure is not safe for use as a residence and the surrounding buildings. There are several reasons for the demolition of buildings. Old structures need to be replaced with new ones. The structure has lost its stability or has suffered structural damage. Small structures are demolished to build large structures, etc. When demolishing a large building, the construction crew clears the area and makes sure that no one near the building is about to explode. Demolition and demolition experts can spend weeks or even months figuring out the best way to demolish a building. This is a tightly controlled demolition that costs millions of dollars and requires extensive planning. But smaller explosions work differently. The average construction crew working to demolish a small office building or remove walls during a renovation doesn't benefit from months of planning. In most cases, construction workers work under tight deadlines. They don't have the luxury of seeing the planned demolition from all sides. As a result, they may not always be ready for demolition, which takes an unexpected turn. Just as a carefully planned large-scale demolition can go awry, so can a typical building demolition. The most important thing to take away from failed demolition stories is that demolishing buildings is always dangerous. Construction workers involved in demolition work face many hazards, including injury, explosion, electric shock, and falls. It is important for construction workers who are injured in a building demolition accident to speak to a construction accident attorney as soon as possible. An experienced personal injury attorney can help you understand your legal rights and determine the appropriate next steps in your case, said Rand Spear, a leading Philadelphia personal injury attorney. Thanks for staying until the end of this video. Share your thoughts or comments in the box below, and see you next time.